Right, and we're live. This is the no frills edition of your Friday headline show, as I can't play any elements. So we're just gonna do
Minor
this.
soundboard difficulties.
Minor soundboard difficulties. So we're just gonna do this, and maybe Dustin will add in the intro music and all that other stuff.
I'm
But
sure he can cut it from the last show.
this is the coldest of cold opens we could throw at you. So here we go. I am joined by Thrash Bastard, noted friend of the show. He was on the hidden track last week. Did the hidden track with me earlier today. Dustin's on assignment in San Diego, so here we are throwing some headlines. So I
Speaking of
figured
cold opens, 42 degrees.
that's a cold open, man. So you were talking about your roommate setting up a smoke shop in his room, apparently,
Yeah, I
which is
walked into the
go ahead.
bathroom for a minute and I was like, Jesus fucking Christ. And I walk in there, just fucking at his desk.
Which is relevant to the link I was going to have you open and talk about a little bit before we actually get into the headlines. If you want to go ahead and
Hmm.
click on that link at the top, yeah. How familiar are you with 18th century medicine?
Probably more than the average person, but by no means an expert.
So this article talks about a method that they used to try to revive victims of drowning in the 1700s, late 1700s, I think. You're perusing it, I see. Uh,
Hmm.
what was the method, Thrash?
Inspired by an American First Nations custom, tobacco smoke enemas were administered by medical practitioners
Wait.
in the 18th century.
Tobacco smoke? What?
Enemas.
Yes.
And for context, for anyone that cannot see,
Mhm.
it is like a bellows for a fireplace
Yes.
equipped with smoking equipment.
Yeah. So actually, the article details that at first they didn't have the bellows, so the medical practitioner would actually have to blow. into- and the problem was sometimes if they had like cholera or something, the particles that would come back and they would inhale them and they would die later. The practitioner would die from trying to administer the smoke enema. So then they
I
got the
feel like this is
bellows.
a thing that still happens in like Portland.
You know what? Probably. Hey, it might happen in a lot of places, to be honest.
Asheville.
Yeah. So yeah, but they thought that for some reason they thought that blowing smoke up your ass, like actually blowing smoke up your ass, would be a good way to help somebody revive from drowning. They thought because it would make you warmer and that the tobacco
Oh,
would like
because that's clearly the problem when you've
right
drowned.
would energize you.
You're, oh, he's a little cold.
Let's let's give him a tobacco enema. I thought that article was fitting for you since you
Is
are.
is this the origin of the phrase blowing smoke up your ass?
You know what? I don't know. We'll have to
That
ask
could be a
Cody
Cody
about that.
Tucker.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I was thinking. But you are in tobacco land over there, so I figured if anybody
We
to share
produce
this,
more tobacco here than any other state in the union, and all of them combined.
they actually talk about that all the tobacco that was imported from America to Britain, and that's when they started doing this back in the day.
There's like a building in every major city in North Carolina that's got some cigarette company's name on it.
Really, like R.J. Reynolds and shit like that.
Yeah, like there's an R.J. Reynolds
Philip
building in
Morris.
Winston-Salem, I think, and then there's a whole like old factory that's turned like one of those gentrified Riverwalk things in
Hmm.
Durham. That's the old Lucky Strike factory.
Wow,
They got the smokestacks and everything. It's great.
that sounds fun. I've never been,
My
but I would
dad
like
got
to.
bit by a snake there.
Ooh, what kind of snake?
Like a black snake just walking around and it
Ah,
jumped
okay,
out of a
not
bush at
venomous.
him.
Good times, good times. All right, well, shall we get into our headlines?
I think we
So,
shall.
this is the biggest headline of the day. As somebody who watches many hours of cable news daily, this is pretty much wall to wall on every channel. Israel indicated it is increasingly confident. We can dispense with that now. They are sure
Yeah.
that
I,
its
I love
forces,
that phrasing. Increasingly confident.
right, that its forces killed Hamas leader Yahya Sinwar in Gaza. Uh, they do have DNA confirmation now. So first they did
Yep.
like dental records and something
I
else.
think he had brain surgery in Israel
Yes.
quite a long time ago. I think they had samples from that as well.
Well, he was incarcerated for 20 years
Yeah, I
approximately in
forgot he was
Israel.
in that ridiculous trade for the one IDF soldier.
Yep. Yep.
like
Yeah.
1,100
This
Palestinians.
guy, shitty guy. He was known as the butcher of Khan Yunis back in the day
Yeah,
when Hamas first started. He was sort of an enforcer who any Palestinian who cooperated or was considered a spy for Israel, he was the one that dealt with them, often
I
by
think that's why he was
execution.
in the Israeli prison. It was because it was
Yeah.
like four collaborators he had kidnapped and murdered.
Yeah, and you talk about that surgery. So the doctor that found, I don't think the doctor that operated on him, but the doctor that found the tumor and said, "Hey, we got to get this guy medical attention." Um, he basically credited with saving his life, and he was like, "Look, it's a big thing for me in my religion. Like I literally owe you my life, and I'll never forget that." And in a cruel twist of fate or irony, that doctor's grandson was one of the people taken on October 7th and was killed.
Mm.
So yeah, this guy was a really, really
He
shitty dude. And
planned October 7th.
planned October 7th, and then in the negotiations for a ceasefire, not that Netanyahu's been a good faith actor, but this guy was often a
Certainly
roadblock.
not.
Yeah, was often a roadblock to any of that going forward. So,
If
um,
anyone deserved to be killed in the way that he was, did you see how? I don't know if you saw how he was actually killed.
no, I saw a picture, but it wasn't very clear to me. I know that they didn't really expect him to be there. They were
Yeah,
doing an
I can
operation, and then they're like,
kind
"Oh
of
wait,
outline the. I read through the. I can kind of outline it.
yeah, do tell."
But there was, I think it was just like a standard Israeli patrol. They weren't looking for him at
Right,
all.
right.
Uh, they happened upon three armed militants who they fired on, and two of them were wounded and fled into one building, and then another fled into a different building, and they put out a drone to look for them, and they found the one that was by himself. And I don't know if you've seen the video. It's kind of wild. It's he's sitting in like an armchair in like a living room full of rubble in this building, uh, and looks like just like hunched over, like defeated,
I
like
think I saw a still
very
photo. Yeah.
like not how you would expect this guy to look
Right, right.
in the moment. Uh, and he kind of half acidly like throws something at the drone. Uh, and then after the drone made visual confirmation, they the Israelis fired a fucking tank round at him.
Oh shit, I
They
didn't know that.
blew like they fired a tank into the building and killed him.
I mean, you know,
If any if anyone deserved it, I
he
mean,
absolutely did. He
the man
absolutely did.
was near universally hated.
Well, and I mean, even
Like
he tried to say that he was going to be some sort of savior for the Palestinian people, but what did October 7th do but get 40,000 Palestinians killed? And he didn't
the
give a fuck.
entire, not to say that Israel is free of any blame whatsoever,
No, not at
but
all.
as like a matter of cause and effect, every death since October 7th is in some way attributable to Yahya Sinwar. I have
Absolutely.
I have very little like there's only so much empathy you can have for that kind of person.
Yeah, and he knew what he was doing when he launched October 7th. I mean, the intent was to make Israel do what the response that they've done and to make them look bad on the world stage, and he was successful in that. But he did that at the sacrifice of thousands of his own people and didn't give a fuck about it. So,
I don't
yeah,
Did you
certainly.
see the headline from a couple of weeks ago where they were talking about they had had several opportunities to kill him, but he was traveling with several, like in the tunnels with several hostages and a suicide
Hmm.
vest.
Yeah. Yeah. So, rest in piss. Yahya
Yep,
Sinwar. All right, you want to hit this next one?
El Bozo. Um, the U.S. warned Israel that it must increase the flow of humanitarian aid into Gaza within 30 days in order to qualify for future U.S. foreign military assistance. Finally.
Yeah, so they've done this before. I think about 6 months ago, they did the same thing, and Israel did respond and beefed up the humanitarian response or the humanitarian aid. But then it's dropped off again. Um, and the concern by a lot of like nonprofits, NGOs that are watching is that Israel appears to be trying to like starve people out. They want to starve Hamas out, but in so doing, they're starving out the rest of the population. Something
You
like
can't
85,
target a siege.
yeah, something like 85% of the requests by humanitarian like NGOs to
Get denied.
bring aid into Gaza have been denied. Um, and so the U.S. has given them a 30-day window. Blinken saying it's not a threat. We're just saying we're concerned about this and want Israel to understand how concerned we are about this humanitarian crisis and that we think they need to allow more aid in. So we'll see. I mean, they did respond positively last time, but only for a short period of time, and then it went back down again. So whether or not it will be
I have a
sustained,
hard I have a hard time seeing uh the US government sticking to its uh
yeah, that
I
has
feel like
been
this is a bit of an empty,
empty threat or gesture.
yeah.
Yeah, I mean, there's been a lot of criticisms of Biden in that, he doesn't seem to actually have red lines when it comes to Israel. He'll say, like, don't do this, and they do it, and then there's no consequences for them doing it.
It's like the Bugs Bunny, don't cross this line, back up, draw another one.
Exactly. Exactly. Which was, Obama was criticized for the same thing back in the day. But, yeah. And Harris has tried to sort of differentiate herself from Biden in
She's
some ways.
definitely been more critical.
Yeah, definitely more critical, but I still don't think critical enough. And
Mm.
I think that the more progressive people in the party are definitely not happy still with her stance there. Actually, let me ask you
Yeah.
this. As somebody who's, politically aware, when Harris said that she was going to have a Republican in her cabinet, a lot of like really progressive people were like, why would you do that? What the fuck? Anybody who was a more moderate centrist, perhaps independent or Republican, was probably already going to vote for you, or not at least not going to vote for Trump. And so if you're saying this to try to attract them, it's that's probably you probably didn't need to do that. And when you say that perhaps they might have, she said, I am humble enough to accept that people might have other ideas or better ideas, but she didn't define what those were. And so a lot of progressives were like,
She
well,
didn't specify what cabinet position either, did she?
that also, yeah. So like, what are the better ideas, and why can't we just take the ideas and do that? What did you think about that move?
I had heard you guys talk about it on the show.
Yeah.
I think people a lot, and I think it's the same with a lot of the Palestine conflict, more with her. I think with Joe, a lot of people might have actually meant it. But with her, I think a lot of the criticism from the left wing of the party along well, she's betraying us by putting in a Republican, or she's not critical enough on the Gaza situation. I think a lot of it, they might feel that way, but at the
Hmm.
end of the day, they're smart enough that they're not gonna let her lose to Trump over something that petty.
Yeah, I
And
agree. Although I've
I don't
listened
know
to
what her strategy is there because I agree. I don't think there's a lot. You're not pulling Republicans that are gonna vote for Trump off with that.
no,
And I think most centrists that would be swayed by that are already either not voting this year, which I know,
plenty
at
are
least I know a lot of people aren't.
sure.
I don't politically, I don't know that it's a great move. I don't know that you're really pulling many people with that, but I think people overestimate the likelihood of her pushing people away with stuff like that too.
Yeah,
It's kind
yeah.
of just dead in the
I,
water.
I tend to agree with you on that, but I have heard some people interviewed in places like Michigan, who people of Arabic descent, who are like, I really don't like that they didn't have a Palestinian speaker at the DNC. I really don't like that she hasn't taken a harder stance in the Palestinian situation with Israel, and maybe I'm not going to vote for her. And it's like, well, are you going to vote for Trump? And they say, well, no, of course he'd be way worse. But then, so what are you? Are you just going to not vote, or are you, what are your options here?
I feel like
Which it's
if your position is of the left, if you're like, I
yeah,
say left, like if you're a Democrat and you're looking to put forward like progressive politics from like a Democratic perspective, like for me, not voting or throwing away my vote because I'm of course voting for Hunter Biden, um,
of course,
but like for me, it's one thing, but if you're someone that is pro-progressive you're shooting yourself in the foot there by
Yeah.
not voting. And I'm not saying like I think the argument that like if you don't vote you can't complain. I
Mm,
think that's a completely invalid argument. But to me, if you're of a party and you align with that party's politics and then you're not participating based on a single issue, uh, especially when that candidate has obviously tried to be like lean more into your direction than the previous choice you had, which I would
yeah.
agree was not great on the subject.
Right.
Like, you're not improving your situation at all. And I mean, like, I don't think you're going to find really any leeway from Trump over the Palestinian conflict. I mean,
Not at
Mr. I
all.
can end the war in Ukraine in 3 days
Yeah,
is
by
not going to
giving
help
Ukraine
you
to
there.
Russia, that's how he'll do
Yeah,
it. Yeah, exactly.
Mr. I'm gonna turn my son's gonna turn Gaza into a like giant 5-star hotel
Right. Yes.
district. I don't think he's on your side here.
No. They have all that great beachfront property. Like we should just,
I
come
don't think
on.
he understands the kind of beach that
Yeah,
Gaza has.
he probably doesn't. All right, let's move on. Israeli airstrikes hit a municipality building in southern Lebanon, killing a local mayor and 5 others. Israel said it hit Hezbollah targets in the area. Meanwhile, Hezbollah continues to fire rockets into Israel. And I'll just hit this. Actually, we're going to put all these together. A Hezbollah drone attack on an Israeli army base killed 4 soldiers and injured about 60 people. And an Israeli airstrike in northern Lebanon killed at least 18 people, per the Lebanese Red Cross. So, all of that is to say that the tensions are certainly not de escalating in Lebanon. It seems to be getting worse. And, both sides are going at it and they're taking more and
I
more
know
territory.
at least one of those airstrikes was like extremely close to several European embassies and like the Lebanese parliament, which I'm
Yes.
not as familiar as I should be with the specifics of the politics here, but it amazes me that the Lebanese I haven't heard anything about the official Lebanese like national government's response to this
Well, because the
because
Lebanese national government
because
almost doesn't exist. I mean, it's a government on paper at best. It's basically a
yeah
failed state, which is why Hezbollah controls the southern part of Lebanon. They're not just a political movement or a terrorist
yeah
organization. They
they
actually,
have effective control of the southern half,
yes,
but I
they
would think you
actually.
would see I haven't seen any reporting whatsoever on uh like any government response
I
besides
haven't either.
Hezbollah,
Yeah, I mean, Hezbollah feels like the de facto regime.
which even I think a lot of the government in Lebanon is if not Hezbollah affiliated Iranian like
They're Hezbollah
Iranian
adjacent,
leaning.
at least,
Yeah.
or Iranian adjacent.
They
Yes.
may not have had a pager, but they've seen one.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. They've definitely been in a room where somebody had the pager or the walkie-talkie. Very likely. All right. Let's see. You want to hit this next one, number 6? It's more Lebanon
Yeah.
stuff, but I thought this was interesting.
The UN said that Israeli tanks forced entry into a UN peacekeeping base in southern Lebanon. I had also seen this. I believe the Israeli story was that they had come under fire
Hmm.
and backed into the UN base
Right.
to uh, get cover, which still, like, I don't feel that
Well,
doesn't feel like a good excuse.
what they said was they had 2 guys that were injured who had taken fire,
Mm.
and so they were trying to extract them and get them out, and so they had to back into this place to get there. And then they said they fired like a smoke bomb, like a smoke screen, to help them do that extraction. The UN is saying that some of their members on the ground there had like smoke inhalation injuries, things like that from that
Yeah.
projectile, and saying that they did it intentionally. I don't. I actually tend to like buy the Israeli story on this one, even though I typically don't. This one kind of
This,
makes sense to me. There's no
yeah,
reason for them
I
to
can
do
see
that.
this one.
Yeah, I think
Um,
I understand that.
you kind of got to do what you got to do if you've got people injured. I think
Yeah,
some of the other incidents that have been going on, like the firing at cameras
yeah,
of
that's
like
different. That's
UN
I'm not gonna.
observation or
Yeah, I
the
don't buy those ones.
watchtower thing,
Yeah,
those I can much more understand. Like we've got a couple guys we need to get out of here.
Yeah. That's those ones definitely seem egregious. This one actually, I think, kind of makes sense. I buy the story. All right. Let's see. The U.S. used B-2 bombers. How old are B-2 bombers? Have been around for a while, right? Am I?
I think I want to say that's an early 2000s or 90s thing.
You can Google it while I read it.
Uh,
The U.S. used B 2 bombers to strike 5 Iran backed Houthi weapons storage facilities in Yemen, seeking to degrade their ability to attack shipping lanes. So they're saying that they had these weapons, munitions stored in like underground bunkers. And man,
Introduction 1997.
yeah, so almost 30 years old. I thought they were.
I believe we haven't used any of them as far as combat rules in quite a long time. I think
That's
this is
what I
the
was
first
thinking
use
too.
in like 10 years.
That's what I was thinking. I was like, when was the last time I saw a B 2 used in a headline? I don't remember. Um, so they're saying they had all these munitions in these underground bunkers. Man, the Houthis have just been that mosquito you can't quite swat, right? They're still affecting shipping lanes, in
They're
that
very
very
much like, what are you gonna do, nuke us?
right. Like, yeah, what's the Robin Williams joke about Afghanistan? What are you gonna bomb us back to the Stone Age? Shit, that's an upgrade. Yeah, these are they have been able to be very effective because Iran supplies them with all these weapons, and they just don't give a fuck. Like, yeah, bomb us. Yeah, whatever. Essentially, we're going to be the cockroaches that survive the nuclear war, and what are you going to do? So,
Yeah, I there's only and like, the worst part is I feel bad for just Yemenis
yeah, for
in
sure.
general besides the Houthis because like Yemen is not in a place to be going around attacking everyone else's boats.
No, they are not. Very rough economics in Yemen, and it sucks that I mean, we back the Saudis, which are part of the problem there as well. So I don't know. It's a shitty situation. I definitely that's a very good point. Yeah, the general population of Yemen are suffering more than they already were before this stuff happened, and it was already not great. So that sucks.
My headline.
Yes.
Uh, President Zelensky outlined a victory plan to Ukraine's parliament with 5 key points, including a NATO invite that he plans to present at an EU summit. I feel putting NATO entry is almost definitely a dead on arrival.
It's
I
a
can
non-starter.
guarantee you.
Absolutely, it
Yeah.
absolutely is. I was listening
I
to a
like I understand the sentiment, but
yeah, I was listening to a podcast earlier with a actual Ukrainian person talking about this, and
was it
she made some
the lawfare lady?
yeah, she made some interesting points, which I hadn't thought of. There is a growing sort of anti-American, anti-Western feeling. She says happening in Ukraine, wherein the the population there are feeling sort of left
Let down.
behind. They're feeling that the U.S. and the West has allowed them to be in this situation now, where things are not looking good on that Eastern Front. Um, it's the war is definitely not looking well, and that partly the way she sees this proposal is just a way to say, um,
Hey
look, hey
guys, we're still
West,
here.
yeah, well, to say, hey West, if we fail, if we lose this war, we gave you the game plan for how we could win, and you said no, and so it's on you, not us. Essentially, is the way
Yeah,
that
like
she
we
interpreted it.
we were ready to do what needed to be done, and you wouldn't
Right.
give it to us.
Yes. Yeah. So part of it includes NATO, which, as you said, essentially non-starter. The other is more long-range weapons and take the handcuffs off and let them, fire into Russia proper, which we've only done in very certain instances.
Yeah.
Um,
I haven't read through it, so I don't know what all else is in there, but
I think those were the
I just
big
can't
three.
see, yeah, I just can't see anything coming out of it if that's
Me either.
in
Yeah.
there.
Sadly, I
Yeah,
agree. And there's two other
and
points that are there's two other points that in the plan which are not currently made publicly available that
hmm,
they've shared with their partners, but they're not sharing publicly. So unclear what those might be. But
I don't know if it's in here. I saw something earlier saying Zelensky had said something about either joining NATO or nukes. They need to be given a nuclear arsenal. Like I believe he meant post-war, like
oh,
post-resolution, either NATO or nukes. which
I
is
didn't
a
hear the
wild
nukes.
thing to suggest on a international stage if that's not false reporting.
That's crazy. I haven't heard that. I did hear it was NATO or perhaps other like mutual defense pacts, like maybe Poland and Ukraine get together and say if one of us gets attacked, we defend the other. Um,
Yep, the Telegraph, Kiev Post, Politico, Zelensky, we need NATO or nukes, and we want NATO.
wow.
I
Well,
mean,
I mean,
I
so
I
the whole
I feel like I get it, but it's not realistic.
the whole agreement that was made after the collapse of the Soviet Union, when Ukraine agreed to give up the nukes that the Soviets had put there, was that they
The
would be left alone.
Budapest
Yeah,
Memorandum,
yeah, was that they would be left alone, and
yeah.
so they gave up the nukes, and obviously we're here. So I guess I understand the request like historically, but that's not going to happen. That's a non-starter as well.
I don't know if that's good. I understand Zelensky's um, like insistence on NATO entry at some point,
Hmm.
but like to say NATO or nukes right now, I feel is not honest, especially considering the reporting on Russia was considering using tactical nukes. I just don't feel like it's good rhetoric to be putting into the ether.
It's fair. I mean, what did they say? They thought it was a 50-50 chance that they would use them,
Yeah.
which is crazy. I was just listening
Um,
to a podcast about the spy who essentially gave all the stuff from Project Manhattan, all the how we made the nuclear bomb to the Soviet Union.
yeah.
Um,
It was
and
a couple, wasn't it?
it was more than one. Yeah, the show I'm listening to is about a specific guy, but I mean that essentially started the Cold War because then they both had nukes and that whole thing happened. But we've seen what nuclear weapons have done on the world stage since, with North Korea being able to kind of do whatever it wants because it has nukes. Um, like, I mean, it's yeah, the nukes or
Proliferation
NATO
is
thing
not a
is
help to anyone.
no,
I
it's
don't
that
think suggesting more is the best rhetoric right now.
for sure.
And I don't know if you've looked at the mapping recently, but they've lost a lot of the
Lawns,
ground they had taken in Kursk.
cursed, yeah,
They've given a lot of it back. I don't know if they're intentionally withdrawing or if it's been taken back, but they've definitely lost ground in Kursk as
and that
well.
was part of the plan
Which,
was to be able to use that as
yeah,
a bargaining chip, and they've lost a lot of it. Yes.
and granted, I don't know that they intended. I don't think they thought that it would work as well as it did. I don't think anybody expected
I
them
agree.
to be able to
It was
hold
quite
out
a
as long as they
surprise.
did.
I mean, we
But
talked to
it's
Cody
still
about it, and he was like, "Man, they're still there. And it's been a week." And then it's like, "Oh, it's been
like
a month. Oh shit,
they,
it's been a month and a
they're
half.
they're still there.
They're still there. How did this happen?" And then Putin was like basically ignoring it and just
Yeah, I don't think he mentioned it by name
no,
at
nothing to
all.
see here. Please move along. Yeah, that
Yeah,
was basically the
it's a special military operation.
indeed, indeed. All right.
Uh, I don't know if you saw, I added
Oh yeah.
another tangential thing under that. Uh, Russia reportedly to form unit of 3,000 North Korean troops to fight in Ukraine, per the BBC. Um, from what I saw, I can't remember if they're volunteers. I want to say they're volunteer
Well,
North
it's North
Koreans.
Korea, so whether they're volunteers or not, they probably aren't actually
Um,
volunteers.
yeah, I don't remember if the North Koreans claimed they were volunteers.
Right, right, right.
Um, but I believe it's like the Buryat Battalion, and they're supposedly been training like in the far east of Russia, and are set to be deployed to Ukraine at some point, which I think there were several North Korean advisors or like non-combat personnel that were killed in a Ukrainian strike in Ukraine uh, a few days ago. So I
I
don't know if
mean,
that was a
Russia
preliminary or
Russia has always the way Russia fights wars is just to throw people at the meat grinder, right? And what they've done in
Chechens.
yeah, and what they've done in prosecuting this war has been to throw people like people from the outskirts, Chechens, right? People who are convicts who are locked up, people who are very poor, and so they have an incentive to sign up because they're going to get some money for their families. But the
I don't think that's an accident by any means.
No, but they're starting to run out of
Uh,
those people. There's only
yeah.
so many of those people, and when it starts getting into sort of more the middle class levels of Russia, that can be problematic. And
When they
Putin
start
knows
having
that.
to push those drafts into Moscow, they're gonna start
Yep.
finding somebody else.
Well, and that's when
Because
you get like the Mothers of Russia movement that happened before, right? Where
yeah,
and that actually that kind of movement actually can gain traction in that country where most can't.
yeah.
So he's afraid of that for sure. So now we got North Koreans in the mix. Yay, good times. All right. Canada expelled 6 top Indian diplomats after alleging their involvement in the 2023 assassination of a Sikh separatist leader and other crimes on Canadian soil. India later expelled 6 Canadian diplomats in it's sort of a tit for tat sort of thing. So we talked about this before on the show.
Yeah.
Um, India's government is terrified of this Sikh movement abroad, even though it really has no power. But Modi,
The I believe the dude they assassinated hadn't even been to India in like
no, I
decades.
think
I
no,
don't think.
no. So a ton of Sikhs moved out of the country, out of India, because of there was a huge uprising, essentially pogroms in India against Sikhs after the
Yep.
assassination of the president, I think. And so they were just getting ripped out of cars and murdered. So a lot of them left. So one of the main places they went was Canada. They have a huge Sikh population. And there's been this movement to convert part of that Punjab region where most of them are from into a Sikh state. But it's never really gotten off the ground at all.
I believe it's at its lowest point now than it has
Yeah.
been in decades.
But I mean, Canada alleges that Indian operatives from within the government like carried out an assassination on
Yeah, I think
Canadian
it
soil.
accused. I think I was listening to I think the Irish Times.
Yeah, you mentioned that before.
They were saying the reason that these particular diplomats were expelled was because the Canadian government had petitioned to like question those diplomats in particular in relation to the murder itself, and they had
They claimed
asked the
immunity,
Indian government if they could um, like
interrogate them essentially.
uh, violate their diplomatic immunity, and then
Mhm.
the Indians had like in expectation of that said that they were going to expel, so the Canadians got ahead of it and expelled those 6.
Oh, interesting. Interesting. I know in the article it does mention that they were potentially associated with that happening, as well as other crimes that they're unspecified happening in Canadian soil.
Trudeau's speech about it was pretty scathing.
It was, and at the time, it was very shocking because it sort of felt like it came from nowhere. It was just like, what happened? Um, but man, that Modi man, he's on one. He's on one over there.
Yeah, and then you have Trump going around. I love Modi. He's such a great guy.
You know, Trump has all the he loves all the best world
He's
leaders.
friends with a lot of
He has
interesting
like the
people.
Pokemon collection of the best world leaders. You know,
Yeah,
Putin and Modi and
and writing love letters to Kim Jong-un.
yeah, yeah, that too. Speaking of Kim Jong Un, is it my
Hmm.
turn?
I think it's mine.
Okay, yeah, it is yours.
Um, North Korea blew up sections of unused road and rail connecting North and South Korea in a move that is considered largely symbolic but escalatory, per the AP. And then I added on to this. Um, Today, ABC Australia reported that North Korea claims to have received 1.4 million new recruits in uh, recent weeks.
For their military.
Yes.
So this is essentially like a temper tantrum of Kim Jong Un's.
Yep.
They have a history of doing stuff like this. When they were pissed off about like their nuclear inspections, they blew up one of like the cooling towers or cooling ponds for one of their nuclear reactors. They've blown up stuff. They've blown up like stuff on their own, like in their own area of the country that would have been useful. They've blown up. There was a building that was
Just
just on the other side of the DMZ that South Korea had built, and they blew that up too, even though it was a perfectly usable building. They're just like, "Fuck that! South Korea did it. We're gonna blow it up." So this is the most
it's
recent thing of them doing.
he's a man child
He
with
is.
a country.
Yep, and with nuclear bombs, that too. Don't forget that. Ballistic missiles, all of that stuff.
We're living
Yeah,
in the
and now he's
worst
got people
timeline.
fighting in Ukraine. Good times. So again, it's seen as largely symbolic, But man, there's so much happening right now in the world that people are like, oh, this doesn't really, that's not that big of a deal. I mean, we
I feel
got,
like a lot of people stopped caring about North Korea after all the stuff with Trump happened in like 2018.
there's,
Like the whole Rocket Man thing.
right, right. But there's so much, man. You got North Korea, you got Ukraine and Russia, you got Israel and Lebanon and Palestine, and you
In
got
Yemen,
Yemen, and it's like there's
Sudan,
just Sudan.
and no
Like
one talks. There's never anything about Sudan
no,
mainstream media.
yeah, it's so crazy. There's so much. It's almost hard to like just process and keep all of it in your head. It's just insane. And the the idea was that through progress and technology and economic expansion, that the world would become a more peaceful and prosperous place for all. Because the reality is, there's enough food to feed everybody. There's enough resources for everybody to have a decent life. But we're nowhere near that than we were a decade ago or a century ago. It seems like.
As George Carlin said, I love people as individuals. It's when they start forming groups there's a problem.
It's fair. This is true. This is true. All right. I think it's my turn. China conducted large-scale military exercises near Taiwan. Oh, I didn't mention this one. Calling it a stern warning against separatist acts after a recent speech by President Lai. So yeah, they conducted a bunch of various exercises right around Taiwan as they've been entering Taiwan's airspace and naval space more often, and a lot more clashes happening. This is pretty escalatory. I was listening to another podcast about this recently, wherein a foreign policy expert said essentially, if she chooses to take Taiwan by force, there's really not much we can do to stop it kinetically the way things are positioned currently.
Yeah,
So the only thing that we really can do is make it seem for him to make the pain, the cost of taking the Taiwan
you can't
more than
stop
it's
him, but you can make it a Pyrrhic victory.
right. Yeah, make it not worth it. And so that's where the whole strategic ambiguity, as they call it,
I know. I
is.
I didn't read through this one.
Yeah.
I haven't. I saw some stuff about this, but I didn't take the time to read it. I know a couple of weeks ago, like several NATO and other like ally countries, like I think Japan and Germany had both had naval forces traversing the Strait of Taiwan for the first time in I think like 10 or 20 years uh, on exercises. I think the Netherlands may have had a ship or two.
Yeah.
Um, so I don't know if that was like provocatory from Xi's standpoint, but I imagine the amount of resources they had dedicated to this, I imagine it had been planned for quite a while.
Yeah, that's probably true. So the they refer to a speech that the president Lai of Taiwan had, in which he said that China has no right to represent Taiwan, which apparently China considered to be inflammatory.
Somehow,
Yeah,
somehow thinks isn't right. They've
yeah.
they've got to pretend like they do.
I mean, realize that the people that fled to Taiwan after the revolution in China were the anti-revolutionaries, and so they've had it in for them ever since. But um,
Chiang
it's
Kai-shek.
yeah. So it's just another hot spot in the world that like we need more. So let's add that one on the pile. All right, we got a couple
All
headlines
right.
from Georgia here. You want to hit this next
Yep.
one?
A Georgia judge temporarily blocked a new state rule that requires election ballots to be hand counted after the close of voting, saying the timing of its passage makes implementation now quite wrong. Um, and then secondarily, a Georgia judge ruled that county election boards have a mandatory fixed obligation to certify election results, saying concerns about fraud should be reported but addressed in court. I remember talking about the second headline, I think, in a show before.
Yeah, we kind of touched on it. So this first one, so essentially what the judge said was that, okay, if you guys want to make hand counting all the ballots a requirement, we can do that, but then you have to
Why
figure out a
wouldn't you have done
process.
that like months ago?
Right. Well, you have to figure out a process that will be efficient, that can meet the deadlines, and you deciding you want to do that right now is not going to work. And so, while he's not saying, you know, you can't do this in future elections, you have to have a plan put forth to make it efficient and possible and doable, and
It's
that doesn't exist right now. So he's telling
monkey and pedestal.
exactly. And then the second one. So this was so ever since the 2020 election, a lot of these election board members who were on the Trump sort of MAGA side have been trying to figure out ways to not certify elections the way Trump had asked Raffensperger to do in the state of Georgia previously. And so this particular election board member had refused to certify a recent election in Georgia based on her belief that some of the ballots were cast invalid, that were invalid.
Yeah.
And so this went to trial, and essentially the judge said, no, your job is to sign off on the election. If you have suspicions that something is wrong here, you can bubble that up, but you're not the judge, you're not
You
the
rubber stamp
investigator.
this, but it's like
Yes.
you're not the person in charge of actually
Right.
doing the investigation here. You don't have like you have no power to do that.
Right. Right. You're not the GBI here. You don't get to do that. You're not the judge, you're not the jury. If you have concerns, bubble them up, but that's not your job. Your job is to sign the thing on the line. Okay. The Justice
15.
Department charged an Afghan national living in Oklahoma for allegedly plotting a terror attack on Election Day in the name of the Islamic State. So I hadn't
I
really heard about this story until it showed up in our service.
yeah.
Um, Pretty interesting. This guy was donating money to known like ISIS front organizations. He was talking to his family and his children about you know what the results of being a martyr would be. He ended up, I think, through Facebook Marketplace is how the FBI got to him. Um, Somebody they had an informant like make a purchase from him. He was selling all of his stuff. He was like liquidating
Yeah.
all the stuff
I think he
to
was
raise
trying
money.
to move his family like out of the country.
He had bought them one-way tickets to Afghanistan, and he was
Yeah.
selling like their house, all their possessions. So some of the stuff he was selling was on Facebook Marketplace. So they had an FBI agent sort of infiltrate that, make friends with him. Then they took him to a gun range, and the FBI agent introduced him to another guy, who he said was like a business relations of his, who agreed to sell him weapons. So then he bought like some AK-47s
I think
and
it was like AKs and drum mags
yeah,
and
yeah.
some ammunition. What I thought was wild was his accomplice in this was his brother-in-law, who is a minor.
Oh, I didn't see that part.
Yeah, I'm not sure what age exactly, but bit strange to me.
That's pretty wild. I mean, Sam Harris has a line which I really don't listen to Sam Harris much anymore. Um,
Yeah, he's kind of
he kind of went off the deep end for me a little bit, but
yeah,
he has a line where he talks about Islamic extremists, where he says that when they tell you what they believe, like believe them. They actually believe that, and then if you take that to the next level, then what are you willing to do if you do believe that? And this seems to be one of those guys who believed it, who bought he drank the Kool-Aid. Um, just a pretty scary situation. He was just planning to open fire, it seems like, on crowds on election day. So
yeah. I mean, and like it it was like wild to me just how like simple it is for someone to fall into that
yeah,
uh in like internet channels depending like it's so easy to get roped into something like that and go down the rabbit hole
hmm
and then next thing you know you're facing life sentences for planning a terror attack and
well, I
the
mean,
fact that he was on the list of people that helped us in Afghanistan.
yeah,
I want to. I would be interested in seeing like if they do any interviews like with him for
like how he got
the
radicalized.
case. Yeah, I want to know where it came from. Like, was he always like an informant of some kind, like a double agent?
Hmm.
or did he get radicalized after uh, the we pulled out of Afghanistan? I want to know.
I mean, there are examples of um, what I would almost call entrapment, where FBI agents or law enforcement agents have basically lured people into getting into plots like this. Um,
I've seen people suggesting that was the case on this one.
I haven't seen that. Everything I've read doesn't seem to indicate that to me. But we don't. I've only read not that much about this story. So perhaps if that's the case, that sucks for him to get roped into something like that. But I don't think we know whether or not that's the case here yet.
Mm. All right. Turkey blocked access to the Discord chat platform, citing sufficient evidence of child sexual abuse and obscenity. It comes a day after Russia blocked Discord.
So what do you
I hadn't
think
seen
here?
this at all.
I know that Discord. I was aware that Discord was being blocked in some places. I tend to think that it's more about control of a population, in that Discord allows people, sort of like Telegram or things like that, where it allows people to communicate sort of
Yeah,
behind where government maybe can't access that communication. If there truly is, CSAM material being, um,
I don't doubt that there's
I'm sure it's out there.
CSAM on Discord and like Discord especially. It doesn't surprise me at all that if
No,
there's more there than you would find other
I
places
mean, if
just
there's guys
because of
sharing military secrets on there, there's probably CSAM. That's
it would not surprise me
yeah,
if there's a
neither would I.
larger
However,
community of that there.
while that's I'm sure that's true, them using that as a reason to block it
When
doesn't.
it's Turkey and Russia doing it, I don't
Yeah,
think that that's their actual reason.
no, that's an excuse. They don't want
Although that is
people.
a it's weird that both of those two are doing it.
It
Like
is.
not because they aren't both authoritarians, but just like opposite sides of the Ukraine issue and stuff, and yet authoritarians in similar ways.
Yeah, I would see it more as a place for people to organize, and that's what they didn't want, especially in
Yeah,
Russia. Turkey is different. I'm not sure what Erdogan's doing over there, but he's got something going
not
on.
following building codes,
Yeah, and running an
bribing the
economy,
mayor of New York.
running an economy. Yeah, that too. Running an economy into the ground. But there's also that. All right, let's see. NASA launched its Europa Clipper spacecraft using a SpaceX Falcon Heavy rocket on a 5.5 year journey to reach Jupiter, a gas giant. Which, if you listen to the hidden track, you'll understand why that's funny. The mission aims to study if the planet's icy moon Europa contains the ingredients for life. So the big problem, there's a lot of difficult things you have to do to get a rocket to Jupiter. One of the biggest problems this mission faced was the radiation. The
Yeah,
radiation that you experience in that region of space is like insane. It's crazy. I think it's, I can't remember what the article said, but it's like 100 chest X-rays in like a day or something like that. It's crazy amount of radiation. So protecting the electronics from that radiation was like the major thing they were worried about. They had to
it's
do
hard
all
to
this.
lead line something that you have to fit into a rocket.
Yes, yeah. So this mission almost got scrapped because they're like, I don't think this technology is going to survive that radiation. They had to do all kinds of testing, figure out new ways to protect the technology, the electronics, and they were able to do that. So I think only like maybe within like the last 6 months they finally greenlit this and were like, okay, we can do this. So there's a very limited number of instruments on this ship because of that. I think it's
Yeah,
only like actually 7 different instruments that they have on this ship, and so it's not going to actually look for life. It's going to look for like the building blocks of life or what you might
signs
expect.
that life could exist.
Yeah,
I it's because there's salty like liquid water oceans underneath the ice crust of Europa is where they
yes.
think
Well,
the life might be
they
coming
think that.
from.
Yeah, yeah. And so this probe is gonna get within I think like 20 miles of the surface, which is crazy.
Hmm.
That's the closest we've ever gotten a probe there. Um, and it's supposed to be able to tell us, give us perhaps, if we see some organic compounds that would be associated with life. then maybe we could explore further. But so 2030, I guess, is when they're saying we'll actually start to get some data from this. So I don't know.
I
That's pretty
think they
cool.
said it might be doing some uh get some flybys of a couple of other things while it's on the way.
Yeah,
Pictures and things.
yeah. Well, and it's slingshotting around Mars and Earth both, I think. So
Yeah,
to gain
I had seen
momentum to
that.
get there. Yeah, yeah. So it's going to pick up some other stuff on the way, but pretty cool. Pretty cool. 2030. We'll see if there's cool stuff on Europa. Who knows? I think that's probably the most likely way that we will find extraterrestrial life. It's not going to be little green men. It's going to be
It's going to be bacteria
yeah. It's going to be
or
amoebas
some
in
sort
water.
of single cell,
Yeah, yeah. Exactly.
especially within our own solar system, obviously.
Yeah, yeah. Absolutely.
All right,
All right. You
moving
want to hit
on.
these?
Yep. Amazon unveiled a $500 million investment to explore the development of small modular nuclear reactors with Dominion Energy to help power data centers after similar moves by Microsoft and Google. Additionally, Google announced it will purchase electricity from a small nuclear reactor company, Kairos Power, by 2030 to power artificial intelligence data centers. I had seen the Microsoft. I had not seen the Amazon or Google
Yeah, yeah.
getting
So
into this.
Microsoft, that was out a while ago. Bill Gates has been a proponent of this nuclear technology for a while now, and so they are investing in that for their AI.
It was 3 Mile Island, right?
Yep. Yeah, it's being retrofitted with new technology. But what's interesting is that nuclear power has sort of, to me, sort of frustratingly not been used as effectively as I think it could have been because of sort of the fears associated with it in the past. And I think if you look at the way this new technology works, it's way safer, and I think it makes a lot of sense,
Yeah,
especially as we try to build a non-fossil
it's
fuel
it's not
energy
it's not a
source.
forever solution by any means, but it's
No, but
like it is a fill the gap
yep,
between
it's a bridge.
coal and oil and
Yeah, yeah. And
renewables.
so what?
And like if Chernobyl hadn't happened and proven that Slavs can't boil water, uh, then I think we would be in a much better place if countries hadn't
Yeah,
become so afraid of
Chernobyl, 3 Mile Island. There's that one in
like
Japan,
yeah,
Fukushima.
Fukushima.
Yeah. Um, what's interesting to me about this is that it is private companies who are now pushing this forward, not governments.
Yeah,
Um, and so uh, that when you
it's
have private,
also
go ahead.
wild to me that like I knew AI needed a lot of power, but I didn't realize it needed nuclear levels of
Oh, it's
power.
insane. I saw. I might be getting this. Hmm, I don't want to be
Lord,
orders
let
of
us have
magnitude
fusion.
wrong. I don't want to be orders of magnitude wrong, but I want to say that I read an article about ChatGPT's whatever their next innovate like their next point one or whatever is
Yeah.
version. The amount of compute that will be required to get to that next version is like the amount of energy that will be required to generate that amount of compute is like the amount of energy the state of Oregon uses in like a year or something crazy like that. It's
Jesus.
just it's insane the amount of power required for that kind of compute. So a lot of these big tech companies are turning to nuclear as a way to get there. It's very interesting to me that they're doing that. All right, CPI is boring. It rose 2.4% from a year ago, above expectations of 2.2, but still the lowest level since February 2021. At this point, it feels like
Is
inflation.
this the one that's like the normal number, like Dustin
Yeah,
says, or is this the one that they do weird things with?
so the PPI is the producer's price
Yeah,
index.
okay.
So that's like the inputs to the economy. That one was also pretty stable. The CPI is what you and I pay. I think bottom line with inflation is that it has pretty much stabilized. It's gotten into in the 2% range, which is kind of what we expect. However, the problem is for your average
2.2% of last year is not where we would be
right
if we had been having 2.2% for
exactly
all 4 years since
right
2020.
yeah. So for your average American, they're still like, fuck, man, I want a Big Mac meal and it's going to cost me $12 or whatever it is, and it used to cost me 8, and I want to go buy some ground beef and it used to cost me $6 and now it costs me 12. Like that's still there, and so when people talk about the economy, specifically, regards to the election, about who they trust more in the economy, which is a big deal. If Trump wins, that will be probably the reason he does, is people trust him more in the economy.
which is like tariffs. I don't
Not going to
understand how
help.
people don't understand this.
It's not going to help at all.
He's doing the opposite.
Right. It's not going to help. But people perceive that. And while, Harris campaign can say, look, it's 2%, we're good. The reality is that people are still hurting, and people are still in sticker shock when they go to the grocery store. It's been 4 years where people are still like, what the fuck, man? And I get
I
it.
don't think people don't take into account like the statistics may be a little bit better, but like the emotion of it is like the 2% doesn't feel like a
It,
tangible number to you.
especially for lower middle class or poor lower income families. Man, it's really tough. It's hard to absorb that kind of cost increase. I mean,
Yeah.
your paycheck certainly didn't go up that much over the last 4 years.
Mm-mm.
Definitely not.
I would know.
All right. I only have one in other news story here. This is a Michael Moore post that Dustin threw into the sheet here.
Hmm.
Dustin, noted Michael Moore fan. Essentially, what Moore asserts in this article is that he thinks that Harris has this election in the bag, but he also thinks that it would be best if she won by a landslide, because there's a lot of ways that she could win the election and still not win the office. And that's his concern. And so essentially, he's saying, yeah, she has this in the bag, but don't take your foot off the gas and definitely get out there. Um, one of the things I was gonna,
A little bit of a tangent, not a tangent, unrelated here. The picture that they used
oh, with
for
Trump.
this link is unfortunate.
Yeah, yeah. One of the things I was going to say when we were talking earlier about whether Harris was alienating more progressive members of her caucus is that
Caucus.
per- perhaps they still will vote for her, but maybe they don't put out the yard sign, or maybe they don't volunteer, maybe they don't knock on a door or talk to their neighbor. Maybe in an election that's going to be as close as this one likely is, um, it's entirely possible that that could be a difference maker. I'm not saying it will be. I'm
Yeah.
just saying
This
it's on the
is
margins.
completely personal anecdote.
Yeah.
I have seen a very surprising number of Harris wall signs.
In North
I don't
Carolina,
know
no
what a
shit.
like here in Boone. I don't
Yeah.
know what a Biden sign looked like.
They didn't exist before, right? Nobody was doing
I
that.
I I don't think I saw one, and I've seen a lot of Harris wall signs, at least around here. I mean, that's completely like personal to me and where I'm at. But I gonna be honest, I don't see Harris losing. I
Man,
can
I don't
see
want to.
it being close,
Yeah.
but I've got a feeling. I think end of the day, a lot of people who maybe aren't thrilled with the choice are gonna come around and say, I don't want mean tweets. That's not what I want right now.
Right.
It's like I want someone who's at the very least gonna not be an embarrassment, and like I think I agree with what Dustin says. I think a lot of people are just fucking tired of him. He's obnoxious and exhausting to
You know,
listen to and hear about every day, and I think people are tired of it.
when I hear people talk about that and then they say he's been essentially been on the political stage for a decade, it kind of blows my mind, because in my mind it doesn't feel like it's been a decade, but it
No.
has. It's been a fucking decade almost, dude. So yeah, there's definitely an exhaustion level, and people can say, I don't know enough about Harris. You can't say you don't know enough about Trump. I mean, unless you stuck under a
Everyone knows
rock.
too much. I know
Yes.
almost everything I learn about that man at this point in my life is against my will.
Right. That's actually that makes You know what? Against My Will might be the show title. Um, so yeah, no, I agree, man. I agree. There's definitely some Trump fatigue in the mix there for sure, for sure. All right, shall we get into media diet?
Sure.
Do you want me to go first?
Yeah.
Okay. So I watched a couple of things on Netflix. I watched Land of Bad, starring Liam
Land of
Hemsworth.
Bad.
Yeah, it's an odd title. Maybe I don't know if that was AI generated or what, but starring Liam Hemsworth, Russell Crowe, and Luke Hemsworth, which I assume is related to Liam. I
All
did.
AI generated looking people.
Yes, exactly. And it felt like an AI movie. No, so this is like a special forces movie where there's like, you know how there's always the guy in the team that really shouldn't be there. Like he's not
Yep.
experienced, but he has like this one special skill you just need to make this operation work. So, we're gonna throw him in the mix. And then stuff goes wrong. That's this
And
movie.
he ends up
Yeah.
being the one guy that you actually it brings
Yes.
everyone together.
Well,
Very formulaic.
I mean, and everyone it ends up being him, but not spoiler. But it's fine. Like if you enjoy you know watching guys shoot each other and throw grenades at each other,
Is it like an Expendables type movie or slightly less,
no, it's not. It's not
uh,
like that. I would say it's more
okay,
like
little more serious?
a little more serious. I would say more like a Denzel kind of thing.
Okay.
Yeah, more like that.
I like a good Denzel
I
movie.
like an Equalizer. Yeah. This is not as good as that, but it wasn't terrible, but it wasn't great either. If you have Netflix and you're bored on a Friday night, go ahead, throw it on. I also watched the new Bad Boys on Netflix,
Oh,
Ride or Die, which is
is
I
it?
I don't understand how you make the exact same movie four times. I don't know how you do that and get away with it. It's very Bad Boy style. You know that he likes making his movies sort of look like a music video and like the
Hmm.
way the scenes are shot and the colors popping and stuff like that. There's a scene with jelly beans and I was like, "Oh yeah. You could just show me that scene, I would know who made this movie." Um it is it's Bad Boys but they're 50. That's what it is. And it you
I
know,
feel like that's a lot of current film
yeah.
industry.
Yeah.
It
I mean, so
was
I think it's the first one or the second one when what's his name, Martin, when he gets high, like he didn't plan to, like he accidentally like takes some pills or gets in his drink or whatever. So there's a similar thing that happens in this movie, but it's not with drugs. It's like he has like a near death experience, and that opens like his brain up into some other realm.
hmm.
So that's a whole trope in this movie. If you like the Bad Boys franchise, you will not be, you'll watch it and you'll be like, okay, I watched a Bad Boys movie. There you go.
All right. So I had started watching The Wire a while back, and it's very good, but
The Wire's awesome.
it's a show that you need to sit down and watch, and I have
Yeah.
like with everything starting back and stuff here, I have not been in the mood to sit down and dedicate myself to it. So I'm a few episodes in, but I'm not gonna comment on it other than that it's very funny. Um, the thing that I will comment on is The Walking Dead because while it's decent,
Hmm.
it has some of the worst CGI out of like a hey, you should watch this TV show that I've ever seen in my life to a comical extent. And story-wise, it's fine. It hasn't I'm only in like a few episodes into the second season, but so far there's not a reason to be obsessed with this show like I know a lot of people are. And I've also been told by Dustin and many others in the group chat that it will inevitably irritate the shit out of me. But I'm looking forward to deciding when I'm gonna stop dedicating
When
time
you're
to
gonna
it.
punch out. Yeah, I
Yeah.
never got into that show. My dad was into it for a while. I tried and I was just like, I don't think this is for me. That show was on, I think it was on USA originally or
AMC.
AMC. Okay. Similar. A lot of those channels like USA, AMC, whenever they did like a sci-fi series, it was always bad CGI. It was always fucking terrible. That was almost part of the genre. Like just that it was like you expected it. Um, so yeah, I'm not surprised by that at all. The Wire. There's one of my favorite scenes. I don't know if you've gotten to this yet. It's McNulty and his partner, and they go into like this apartment where a woman had been murdered, and there's a whole scene where the only words they say are "fuck."
I have seen that.
They
It's
just
so
like
funny.
he like opens the door and
Fuck.
he's like fuck, and then McNulty
And
like
that
looks at
like
him.
with the window and
Yeah, fuck.
the tape measure. Fuck.
Yes, that's brilliant writing. That's the kind of writing I'm here for. Also, I don't know if you can catch this. I don't know where I saw this, but there is a version of The Wire. It's like a director's cut or whatever, where
Hmm.
the writer comes on before each episode and gives you sort of some backstory about what he was doing in that episode, which is really good. It's really fun.
Hmm.
That the guy who wrote that show is a fucking genius. I can't remember his name right now, but he's
I
brilliant.
also one of my favorite scenes from the show is McNulty and his partner in a vacant apartment where there's a like severely decayed corpse, and
Mhm.
they have a short conversation, and McNulty walks away, and his partner taps a cigar ash onto the guy's face and said, "Don't you fucking dare come back a murder."
I do remember that. That first season was my favorite of The Wire. The second season takes a little bit to because you're like, what are these characters? Where do these people come from? It still is good,
Mm.
but the first season was my favorite by far.
And the only other thing that I have to bring up is I went to a concert on Saturday.
Oh, yeah. How was it?
Uh,
Who'd you see?
Testament create, which is my favorite band of all time, and then Creator and Possessed.
Ooh,
And I went with my brother.
yeah.
God love him. Uh, we got there a little late, so we didn't get to see too much of Possessed. Creator was great, and then about half after Creator, he came up to me and said, "I've done something to my back. I'm gonna go outside." And about halfway through Testament, we ended up having to leave because my brother, who does not listen to metal whatsoever
Hmm.
at all, had followed me into the mosh pit
Oh no.
and herniated a disc.
Oh no.
Yeah,
Oh, older brother, I
and
assume.
22
Okay, not much older.
herni herniated a disc and had to
Oof.
uh, drag himself to the bathroom so he could call me.
Oh god.
Uh, and then
Is he okay now? Is he better? Or?
he was bedbound for a couple of days.
Yeah.
It sucked.
Wow.
Uh,
That does suck, man.
Thankfully, I've seen Testament before, so it's not the end of the world that we had to leave. But I was a little frustrated.
Yeah, but you're like, I'm frustrated, but you herniated to this,
I
so I
I
understand. Yeah.
I'm sorry. Like I love you, but you're an idiot.
Oh, good times, good times. All right. Well, normally
Ugh.
I would ask you a question and then we would play the outro. But I guess there may or may not be an outro, folks. I don't know if Dustin's going to be able to add that stuff in post or not. We'll see. Um, so I have a quick question, and
Hmm.
then we're going to press stop.
All right.
Are you ready? How do
Ready
you
as
feel
I'll
about
be.
mayonnaise? Mayonnaise is like a controversial condiment. I know people that absolutely fucking hate mayonnaise. Like if it like touches like a corner of their burger or sandwich, they're like, I'm not eating that. And I know people that just really like mayonnaise. Where do you come down on the mayonnaise?
Despite my complexion, not a big fan.
Okay, don't like the mayo. Okay,
Um, I this is a great I was the perfect person to ask this question. I have strong opinions on mayonnaise.
do
All
tell.
right. As a proud mayo monkey, I have strong opinions on mayonnaise.
I was unaware I was going
Um,
to tap into this.
all right. Mayonnaise is acceptable
Mhm.
on subs and deli sandwiches. Like a ham sandwich, mayonnaise is acceptable only to thicken the mustard. It's good to change the texture of mustard so that it
Ah,
doesn't fall off of the sandwich as much. And it's good on a sub. There is no other acceptable use of mayonnaise.
so actually that leads to my real question that we're going to go out on, which
Hmm.
is mayonnaise just sandwich lube?
I think it's the opposite.
It's the opposite. No, it helps it go down better. Like it's too dry without the
No,
mayo.
it's mayonnaise is to thicken the mustard. Mustard is the lube of a sandwich.
You're denying my entire premise. Okay, I see. I understand.
I object to your reality and substitute my
My
own.
own. Yeah, yeah, yeah. All right, ladies and gentlemen, that was your headline show. Thank you, Thrash, for joining me, having some fun here on the
Woo!
headline show. That was a good time. Happy to have you
Yes.
on again. Next time maybe my elements would work. That'd be cool. All
We
right,
could
folks.
get Dustin to do all of the computer magic for us.
Yes, let's do that. All right, cheers.
See ya.